February 6th, Mew gave birth. Hello everybody, EpicMewtwo here for another epic episode of the Pokebladers United. And today, we are celebrating Mewtwo's birthday. Happy birthday, Mewtwo, my channel mascot. So I wanted to do this one because it's Mewtwo's birthday, and two, I need to get a video out to you guys. So, I wanted to make a Mewtwo-themed birthday video in honor of his birthday. So, I decided that today we are going to look at Mewtwo sprites and models in X and Y and ORAS throughout all of the games that he's appeared in, which is everyone, and just see how they've changed, maybe make some comments on them, and yeah, we'll have a good time. I was thinking about doing a video maybe where I talk about him in the different media forms he's in, but Jwits, if you don't know him, please go check out his channel. He makes great content. He actually made a video today talking about that exact thing, so I'll put his channel and that video in the description below. Please go check that out. It's a great video after you're done with this one. So yeah, let's get right into those sprites. So first we have the Gen 1 sprites. There are actually 3 different sprites for this one. First we'll go with the red and green sprite because that was the original. He looks, all of these sprites you can tell he looks like Mewtwo, but in the red, blue, and green sprites, he looks kind of flesh tone, and that looks a bit odd from his purple color that we know him as today. But that one it does make him look a bit more genetic, I would say, and he's standing straight up. As well, I'm not going to cover the back sprites because they all look like Mewtwo, except I'll just put this one up. The only difference is the tube on his back looks a bit thin. And they're all the same for all of the first generation games, and they're all the same, the back sprites for every generation, so that's the only back sprite I'm going to show. But back to the red and green sprite, it just looks like Mewtwo. For the red and blue sprite, this Mewtwo looks a bit different. It looks like he has a longer neck, definitely more genetic this time. He's hunched over, has a bigger tail, and he looks kind of creepy, honestly. His hands are hanging low. He looks definitely more like a genetic Pokemon, and he looks more creepy, maybe. I don't know, I think the other Mewtwo kind of looks like the original Ken Sugimori artwork, if I'm thinking of the right thing. But this one looks like its own original thing, and his long neck is kind of creepy. But anyway, now we will move on to the yellow sprite. This one, he actually is yellow. His tail actually has a red tint to it, and it kind of looks like a Dragon Ball Z, like he's powering up type of thing. But he almost has that come at me bro stance. But this stance is very interesting. It's different from the other 2 sprites from Generation 1. And I think it's interesting that they made a unique one for yellow, especially with that weird tint. And yeah, I just think this one's pretty cool as well. It looks more like Mewtwo now. He doesn't have that creepy neck thing going on. So now we'll move on to Generation 2. So Gold and Silver, there were actually different sprites for Mewtwo. In Gold, he was just kind of standing there, and he had his hand out at the screen. Nothing really too unusual, although he does have quite a large tail, I would say, kind of reminiscent of the first one. And then the Silver sprite, he's leaning over. It almost looks like he's about to form a shadow ball, maybe, or use headbutt, something of that nature. But it's interesting that they chose 2 different sprites for these games, because that is actually the only game where, for when they came out with 2 at the same time, for example red and blue, gold and silver, there were different sprites for Mewtwo. So that's an interesting little tidbit. And I just think it's interesting how they made him leaning over. Also, his face kind of looks different between the 2 just because of the angle that it's at, and the shadowing is actually very nice in the sprite. And then the Crystal sprite, the only difference is that it is the gold sprite, but now it's animated, and it lights up and blinks a bit, and his eye blinks, which is what I was trying to say, and just kind of looks like he has power going through him, or electricity kind of thing. Then the Ruby Sprite and the Sapphire Sprite. He looks very angry in this one. Now he's looking directly at the audience, which he hasn't done in a Sprite yet. And he has her hand at you. Very creepy. His face kind of looks more rigid, I would say. It doesn't have as many round curves in it, so that makes him a bit more menacing. The tail looks a bit big on the start, but that could just be me. And then in Emerald, he kind of gets like bigger and smaller. It's hard to describe, but he goes in and out. Just interesting little thing. And then the Fire Red and Leaf Green Sprite is the same as the Ruby and Sapphire Sprite. Then we have the Diamond and Pearl Sprite. Now Mewtwo is, as well as the Platinum Sprite, Mewtwo is just standing there with his hands out, looking at, he kind of looks like he wants a hug, but he's looking off into the distance this time. And the one thing that if you have noticed so far, besides the one where he's looking directly at the camera, Mewtwo has been looking in the same direction the whole time, which I guess every Pokemon is, but it's just an interesting thing to note. And yes, his hands are out, and it almost looks like the horns on him didn't get as much black outline as they should. Like, they look a bit detached to me, like not detached off of him, but they just kind of look like, I don't know, it's hard to describe, but not really part of the sprite, I guess. So I just felt like there should have been some outline done. The tail looks nice on this one, as for that, and this sprite looks very good. Then the Heart Gold and Soul Silver Sprite. Mewtwo looks a bit different in this one. I feel as if he is almost a bit reminiscent more here of the Yellow Sprite, just because, well, he seems more thin, I guess, maybe skinnier. The tail is definitely skinnier than the previous sprites. His hand is out like he's about to shoot a blast or something, and his other hand is just kind of up there. His face looks very different. It almost looks like he has a concerned look from the way the sprite looks. And it just looks very interesting, this sprite. He's standing with his legs spread apart more than the other sprites. And I think it's interesting that they kind of changed that up for the remake, which I like, which they should do, which I'm glad they did. And yeah, it just looks generally good, and the ears are outlined this time a bit more. So then we move on to the Black and White and Black and White 2 sprites. These sprites are animated, so he's just kind of moving around. His hands are out again, and if you actually notice this, it is just pretty much an animated version of the Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum sprite of Mewtwo. Black and White 2 just took that sprite. Again, the ears kind of look a bit odd, but that's excusable again. And yeah, it's just the same sprite from before. Then we come to the X and Y and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Now, these aren't sprites, these are full models, so they look a lot nicer. He looks very outlined. The tail looks pretty proportional. It's longer, I guess, especially if you look at the back of the model. Mewtwo looks very menacing in this one, especially if you check out the one from the cutscene where you meet him before you catch him. And this Mewtwo sprite looks very nice, as expected from these new X and Y models. They look great, and he's just kind of moving around, moving his tail. Looks very nice. I like it. Then the Mega Mewtwo X sprite got kind of a battle stance there. Very outlined. Looks very nice. You can't actually see, you can only see a little bit of the tail, which is kind of odd to me, I guess. Just because it makes part of him look like a rectangle, which I don't feel like that should be the case. But nonetheless, the sprite looks good, and you can see the different bumps in the artwork. They did a very nice job with that. And then finally, the Mega Mewtwo Y sprite, his head handle. The tail off the back you can see and tell where it's coming from. You can see the ridge in the middle outlined again. And his like the middle toe on his feet, the middle toe, yes, on his feet does look a bit odd just because it's bigger than the others. That is how it's designed, but it just looks a bit too big in my opinion. But otherwise, this sprite looks nice, and he's floating in the air, which is pretty cool, and that is the first time he's done that. So that is all the sprites we have for today. Thank you guys for watching this epic episode of the Pokebladers United. I hope you enjoyed. Happy birthday, Mewtwo. EpicMewtwo out. Peace.